So you want to hear a story? I got one for you. And this one has a witch, a curse, and a murder. Welcome to Hex Hollow. 1928 Pennsylvania, a town that looks like it was ripped right out of an old folktale. Rolling hills, green fields, deep woods. A place the locals call Hex Hollow. Now, officially, it's known as Raymeyer's Hollow, but no one really calls it that anymore. For over 100 years, it's been a place where people whisper about witchcraft, curses, and something called powwow. Now, this is not the Native American ceremony. No, this powwow is an old German folk magic brought to Pennsylvania by early settlers and still practiced today. It's a mixture of Christian prayer and old world superstition. What could possibly go wrong? They were called powwow doctors, the folks who practiced this type of healing. They blessed livestock, treated ailments, and protected against evil. For this, they were loved. They were also feared. People of the time believed they could heal. They also believed they could cast spells that could make you sick, even spells that could kill. The most powerful powwow doctor in Raymeyer's Hollow was none other than Nelson Raymeyer. It was his family that had settled this area. Nelson was a tall, imposing individual with piercing eyes. He lived alone in a crumbling old house tucked away in the hollow. He never married, rarely spoke, and possessed an ancient book, The Long Lost Friend, a real-life spell book passed down through generations. So, maybe not quite the Hollow's most eligible bachelor. People throughout the Hollow and the surrounding area would seek Nelson out, convinced he could do all sorts of things. It was said he could stop bleeding just by whispering, heal animals by touch, cure illness with prayer. It was also said he could curse people. Now, whether Nelson truly had any power or it was just some kind of paranoia didn't matter. As far as John Blymeyer was concerned, Nelson was the source of all his suffering. John Blymeyer was a frail and terrified 23-year-old raised in the powwow tradition and taught from a very young age that curses were real. The past year had not been a good one for John Blymeyer. He was fired from his job. He began losing a lot of weight. He couldn't sleep, sometimes for days at a time. When he did sleep, he had terrible nightmares, and then he started hearing voices. He was convinced he had been hexed. I mean, honestly, what else could it be? John did what any reasonable person would do. He sought the advice of rival powwow doctor Emma Knopp. She immediately declared, "You have been cursed by Nelson Raymeyer." And because she was a doctor, she also provided the cure. Get a lock of Nelson's hair. Bury the hair 8 feet deep in the ground. Burn Nelson's spell book, Long Lost Friend. Do this, and the curse would be lifted and John's life would return to normal. Well, that sounds easy. So John got himself a posse. Maybe not a big posse, but a posse. He got the help of 2 friends, John Curry, a 14-year-old boy from the Hollow who was scared but willing to help, and Wilbert Hess, who had at one time lived in the Hollow and was convinced he was also a victim of Nelson Raymeyer. On November 27, 1928, the plan was set in motion. Under the cover of darkness, because, come on now, makes the story sound a whole lot cooler, the 3 men set out for Nelson's home. The wind howled through the trees. The only light was from the moon and the lanterns that the men carried. When they reached Nelson's home, he immediately let them in. He knew both Blymeyer and Hess, and the other was just a boy. He had no reason to be alarmed or suspicious. Many people came to Nelson for help, and he didn't exactly have regular doctor office hours. John Blymeyer let Nelson know why they were here. He demanded Nelson provide them with a lock of his hair and his spell book, which, of course, Nelson refused, and then demanded the men leave his home. Now, this didn't sit well with the 3 men, who felt that they had every right to make such a reasonable demand of Nelson, and an argument broke out that quickly turned violent. The 3 men attacked Nelson. He was strangled and then beaten with a large wooden beam. That was the end of Nelson Rehmeyer. The three men searched for Nelson's spellbook, but they were unable to find it, so they did the next best thing. They poured kerosene over Nelson's body and lit it with a match, content that the fire would erase the evidence of their crime and take the whole house with it. They were wrong. They fled the house, wondering if this would be enough to lift the curse. The plan, remember, was to get a lock of Nelson's hair and burn his spellbook. Instead, they had beaten and strangled Nelson and then set his body on fire. Tomato, close enough, right? Unknown to the three men at this point, within minutes of their exit, the fire went out. Nelson's body was discovered on November 29th. Hours later, all three men had been caught and charged with murder. They accepted responsibility, saying they had no choice. They were removing a deadly curse. The press, of course, always wanting to be sensational, dubbed it the Hex Hollow Murder. The courtroom was packed and the public was obsessed, sort of like the Diddy trial. Things continue to get stranger. After Nelson's death, all of John Bleimeyer's symptoms vanished. He began to gain weight. He was able to sleep without nightmares, and the voices no longer spoke to him. An investigation provided no rational explanation for why the fire went out without burning down the whole house. The house was, in fact, a wooden structure that had been built more than 50 years ago. The area in front of the fireplace where Nelson's body was found was still wet with kerosene. There was no water, no sprinklers, no stone walls, nothing that would have prevented the spread of the fire. Just maybe something in that house didn't want to be destroyed. Or maybe Nelson had placed a protection spell on the home. The home still stands today, owned by a descendant of Nelson Rehmeyer. The house is occasionally open to paranormal investigators who report chills, shadows, and whispering voices. They also report capturing electronic voice phenomenon, or EVP, phrases like, "You shouldn't be here," and "Don't touch the book." The spell book, the long-lost friend, was never recovered. Some believe it was hidden at the house, in the walls, under the floor, buried outside on the property. Others believe the book is protected by Nelson's spirit and will never be found. Now, if you ever find yourself driving through York County, Pennsylvania, you might just see a crumbling farmhouse through the trees. If you do, don't go looking for the book. They say the curse still has a name, and it's not done with us yet. Thanks for watching. Now it's dark. If you want more stories of mystery and the macabre, hit that like button, subscribe, and let me know in the comments why that fire went out. Is there a supernatural reason or something else? And where is the spell book? Until next time, sleep with one eye open.